Namaste, everyone. Today is our podcast on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17. And chapter 17 is about yoga and the three types of faith. Pandit Atul, namaste and welcome.
Namaste and good morning.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what chapter 17 is all about in Bhagavad Gita?
Well, chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita covers the divisions of faith. And basically, it looks at all the things that are part of human life from the perspective of three gunas. Things such as our faith, giving in charity, and eating are some examples of things that are described there.
So, the three gunas, you mean the Sattva, Tamas, and Rajas are mentioned here?
Yes, that's correct. Sattva is the mode of goodness or purity. Rajas is the mode of passion, attachment, and activity. And tamas is the mode of ignorance, indolence, and material growth.
Right. So, in the verse 4 of chapter 17 in Bhagavad Gita, talks about people worshipping entities and angels and devas according to this three gunas. Can you speak a little bit about this verse, Yajante Sattvika, this verse?
Yes. So in the verse beginning with Yajanti Sattvika, it is describing the different things that people do. So for example, there are those who worship the Supreme Person and who worship angels, and they are after benefits such as they want to have blessings, they want to have auspiciousness in their lives. And this is considered worship that is in the mode of goodness. It is sattvic. And then there are worship of asuras, those who are, that may worship other men and women, or they may worship asuras. This is in the mode of passion. We can translate this to the context of modern society. For example, people who are fans and who literally worship sometimes, a rock star or some other person. They may not even be after some benefit, but this is definitely rajasic, and it is a type of worship. And then in tamogun, there are those who worship ghosts and other spirits and dark entities. This is sort of like in voodoo.
Or
and
people who do Wicca or magic, sometimes not them.
No, Wicca is actually more goddess worship, and
Okay.
Wicca is very Shakti oriented, and actually a lot of people that I've known who practice Wicca have a more sattvic outlook
Yeah.
on life.
Okay.
Really, in India, worship always involves both Shakti and Shaktiman, and Wicca is really kind of emphasizing the Shakti aspect of worship, and because of the patriarchal attitude of the medieval church, the feminine aspect of the divine was really kind of cut out of things, and so practitioners of Wicca and pagan religions were really persecuted.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask this question because, I talk about goddess worship also, and I've met a lot of beautiful Wicca worshippers who are very positive, and they worship nature and Mother Earth and seasons. And people who don't understand them are the ones who say, "Oh my God, this is voodoo." So we wanted to clear that up. So this particular verse also talks about, the word it uses is yaksha, that people who worship yaksha and rakshasa. What does yaksha mean? Can you explain that?
Yakshas and Rakshasas they are powerful races of beings. They are different. Yakshas tend to have more technological proficiency, whereas Rakshasas are shapeshifters. And they have very specific powers. They naturally have powers. They have abilities such as being able to convince people of things and change their minds and influence. So that is a very common thing amongst Yaksha and Rakshas. Yaksha and Rakshas also can mix among human society, and
Because they can change shape.
they can make their appearance pretty much whatever they like. And it is very difficult to tell, especially nowadays.
Well, okay. So let's move on to, so we've established people who are naturally in the Sattva, the mode of goodness, are attracted to angels and devas. Then mode of passion, which is the Rajas, are attracted to these yakshas or beings with power. And
Or powerful humans.
And in tamas, or mode of ignorance, may be attracted to sometimes the pretatmas or the bhutas, which means
Ghosts and dark spirits.
Dark magic and dark spirits,
yeah.
Yes.
One other thing I want to add in terms of the whole Wicca witchcraft association is that, there have been people who do dark rituals, usually doing unclean type of things, such as, offering body fluids, body parts, and other kind of disgusting practices that are meant to attract dark entities. For example, in some scriptures, there's reference to human sacrifice.
Ouch.
And there are no devatas who will accept even animal sacrifice.
Yeah, I've heard stories of, in Hinduism as well, and our stories in India growing up. Oh, they were doing some like cutting up a goat or something and giving a sacrifice to Kali or Durga. And I would always wonder, how is Kali or Durga, who are a goddess, accepted? So they don't accept it then, right?
Absolutely not. No, Kali, Durga Mata never will accept any such thing. She is the Shakti of Bhagavan Vishnu. She is the external energy, and her job as the superintendent or the mistress of the dungeon of this material world is it's a difficult one, but although she has a ferocious aspect, she is also devoted to Bhagavan Vishnu, and she would not consume any such thing. But she has associates who are Dakinis or dark witches and others who follow her and who get benefit by following her and sometimes doing her dirty work. And they will accept these kind of blood sacrifices.
Yeah.
She does not accept them. But it is also said that if you must eat meat, then you take a goat, and on a dark moon night, you whisper into the ear of a goat a mantra that says, "As I take your life, so you shall become human and take my life," meaning I will become a goat, you will become a human, we are having an exchange, and then you can cut the goat's throat and hear it screaming and have the blood spattering and know that you are taking a life and you are suffering, and you will have to become a goat in exchange. And this is actually meant to discourage people from eating red meat, because we go in the grocery store and we see all this neatly packaged meat and we think, oh, what will I choose for dinner? But really, there's the product of violence here.
There's also, we've been in our college before, in San Diego College of Ayurveda, now in Narayana. We've been teaching about, focus on vegetarian, vegan diet. And a lot of people argue, what about if I like it? So doesn't this chapter also talk about, people in Sattva or mode of purity and goodness are naturally attracted to vegetarian diet? And those in the mode of passion are attracted to what kind of diet?
Well, in the mode of passion, people will be more attracted to eating meat and other things. They will like to have spicy food. Now, there are different perspectives that are given in this chapter. For example, it is said that sattvic persons will like things that are wholesome and pure and clean, and rajasic persons will like things that are very passionate in nature, and tamasic persons will like things that are that are, tasteless, decomposing, stale, rotten, etc. But there are different ways to also look at this, and there's the karmic perspective as well as the sense of what someone influenced predominantly by a particular guna is attracted to.
I just want to make it clear to anybody who's listening. This is not stuff we are making up. We are talking from chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by Sri Krishna, who is one of the primary deities, the supreme person in Hindu religion. So verse 7 talks about aharastvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priyah yagyastapasthatha danam tesham bhedamimam shrinu. So herein he's talking about ahara, and ahara is the food or the diet, and trividho, three types, right? And then it's talking about three types of charity, three types of yajna, three types of food types. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, this is just the introduction. Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, okay, we're going to talk about how there are three types in everything. We're going to talk about three types in sacrifice, three types in charity, three types in food consumed, and three types in austerities.
Right. And then the next verse is what you just talked about, that, people who are in Sattva are naturally attracted to sattvic food, like this one, Ayuhu Sattva Balarogya. What is it?
Ayu Sattva Balagarogya Sukha Priti Vivardhana Rasya Snigdha Stira Hridya Ahara Sattvika Priyaha.
So
these are the types of foods that are very dear to those who are sattvic in nature. Those things which are nourishing, juicy, sweet. They may also be somewhat fattening. These are actually sattvic things.
And these are all vegetarian, plant-based foods that they're naturally attracted to.
Yes, it is lactovegetarian. Things like ghee, milk, vegetables, fruits. Yes.
Then the verse 9. So in Ayurveda, there's 6 kind of rasas. It's interestingly mentioned in the verse 9. Some of these rasas, katu, amla, lavana, ushna, tikshna, ruksha. So katva, amal, lavana, tushna, tikshna, ruksha, vidahinaha. Yeah. And it causes
katu, amla, lavana, tushna, tikshna, ruksha, vidahinaha. Ahara rajasasyeshta dukkha shokamaya pradaha.
So can we explain that, please?
So these are the things that persons who are predominantly influenced by Rajogun are attracted to. Those things which are, and the key word here is ati.
Yeah.
Excessive. So because we should actually have 6 rasas in our taste, but those who are attracted to things that are excessively hot, excessively sour, excessively salty, that give a burning sensation, this is rajasic.
Yeah, so I'm reading this Bhagavad Gita by Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and he mentions that this is actually what's mentioned in Ayurveda, that if you have excessive bitter, excessive sour, salty, pungent, then you can get a burning sensation in the tongue, throat, and belly, and wind and indigestion follow, which is interesting because Vayu and Agni are actually imbalanced when we have excessive these tastes. All right, now let's talk about what does it mean to have pure food which is fresh. So when we say fresh food, we just assume it's been in the fridge for 5 days or 6 days, it's still fresh. However, according to Bhagavad Gita, there is a different definition of fresh food. What exactly is fresh food?
So in verse 10, Sri Krishna defines those things which are tamasapriya, or attractive to those who are in the mode of tamogun. Yata yamam gatarasam puti paryushitam chayat uchishtam apichamedhyam bhojanam tamasapriyam. So yata yama means something that after it has cooked, at least one yama has passed, meaning about 2 to 3 hours. So ideally, we should have food that is cooked fresh, and we should have food that is freshly harvested and freshly cooked, and we should not have things that have been sterilized and packaged for a long shelf life, or frozen and then microwaved. That actually is going to have more of a tamasic quality. Now, obviously, if I cook some nice fresh vegetable and let it sit out, it's quite possible that there's going to be some bacterial growth, and it's going to, I can possibly get food poisoning. And that's a big deal for, if you have any kind of a business that serves food, of course, especially if you have, meat and fish and other things, they will go faster into that state. But Yata Yamam is very important because it really says that ideally the best thing to do to put into our bodies is cook fresh and eat fresh.
Get hyper local, get something from a garden or locally grown, get it, immediately cook it, eat it. Interestingly, when I was growing up and I was really little in India, we didn't have any fridge. The fridge came later. And when we didn't have any fridge, food would come. It would be cut, it would be prepared, it would be offered to God, we would eat it. And whatever was left over was given to cows and dogs, and leftovers were given to poor people. So there were no leftovers in the fridge. The invention of fridge has, and also there is no tinned food or so from these three verses, I would probably say canned and tinned and preserved and frozen, everything is then becomes tamasic then.
Yes, you can definitely say that. And it's, the problem is that in our modern society, we're under so much pressure. And how many times have I gone through a work day and I literally will have 10 or 15 minutes to prepare and eat my lunch? You really need about 20 to 25 minutes just to cook something. And you can, with practice, you can get your cooking time down to about 20 minutes for any meal. You just have to have the right things lined up, but you need to have a kitchen, and that's often simply not possible. So we fall back to microwaving something that's,
which is the worst. So microwaving is like giving radiation to the prana or the chi of the food. I just want to mention, if we take a food and we prepare it, let's say it's a very simple tortilla, and we offer it to the divine, then it remains fresh longer. It will not turn tamasic.
Yes, this is true. But I also want to say something vis-a-vis the packaging and sterilization. I believe somewhat differently. I don't believe that microwaving is per se harmful, but the things that have to be done for food to keep a long shelf life, you basically have to remove all the bacteria. And it's actually the bioactive component of fresh food is part of what's beneficial, and studies have shown that the biodiversity of our gut bacteria is a very important part of the health of our immune system. And that is actually supported by the idea of harvesting freshly and cooking freshly. And because cooking doesn't destroy all those bacteria, but it's the food that is overly sterilized that is harmful.
Beautiful. So in conclusion, there are three types of food that people are attracted to. Foods in the mode of Sattva, which are lactovegetarian, then foods in the mode of passion that are excessively sour or pungent or so on, or hot and spicy, too much hot and spicy. And then there is people who are attracted to tamasic people, or if you are in the mode of tamas temporarily, you might be attracted to things that are frozen, canned, tinned, being prepared, and lying in the fridge, freezer for months, things like that. So that's it. That concludes our chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita talks. Thank you, Atul.
Thank you.
Namaste. This is our second podcast from Narayana Ayurveda. Namaste, and I'm talking to Pandit Atul Krishna, who is the teacher for philosophy and Sanskrit and Ayurvedic nutrition. So, welcome, Pandit Atul.
Thank you. Welcome and namaste to you.
So, what I wanted to talk about was the text Bhagavad Gita and its connection with yoga. How is Bhagavad Gita a text for yoga?
Well, that's a great question. Bhagavad Gita is considered to be one of the primary texts for anyone who wants to understand the yoga system. People sometimes used to misunderstand yoga as referring to the exercises of doing asana and sometimes a little bit of pranayama. But actually, yoga is very involved, and there are many different systems of yoga. And Bhagavad Gita gives an overview of these. It gives an overview of Ashtanga Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and others. Sannyas Yoga also.
Well, that's my second question. There's all these yogas out there. So you're saying the yoga is not asana, and the yoga that is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita has nothing to do with asana. It is something to do with the mind?
Well, it's a very good question because asana is part of yoga. Ashtanga means the 8 parts, and the first 2 parts of Ashtanga yoga are yama and niyama. Yama means to follow some rules, some do's, and niyama means to follow some restrictions, some don'ts. For example, one should be clean. One should refrain from unnecessary indulgence in sex, brahmacharya. One should refrain from stealing. One should refrain from dishonesty and harsh speech and blame and criticism of others. So these are yama and niyama. And then comes asana and then pranayama, because asana is meant to help with pranayama. And then there's pratyahar, or withdrawal from the sense objects. And there is dharana, or being fixed, attaining a fixed or steady state. And then dhyan, actual meditation, takes place. And the culmination of the meditative state is samadhi, when one has achieved a full state of deep and transcendent absorption.
So my next question is, who is a yogi? Because people go around talking that I'm a yogi. What really is a yogi? It's not someone who's practicing 3 hours of yoga practice a day with lots of exercise, is it?
No, if someone is doing the physical exercises of yoga, that is going to be beneficial, and that has clear beneficial physical and mental benefits for anyone who does it. That has been clearly established. But really, according to Bhagavad Gita, a yogi is one who is using the yoga process as a means to achieve the goal of union, because yoga comes from the Sanskrit verbal root yuj, to unify, to unite. It's the process of union with the divine and coming in contact with greater spiritual reality and connecting. That is really what the essence of yoga is. And the different yoga paths, they simply give different alternative methods that one may follow. For example, Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of loving union. I want to be united with the divine in a relationship of love, of loving exchange, giving of myself with love. And that is just to give one example.
So when a person takes up yoga or they want to be a yogi, where do they start in Bhagavad Gita? What do they do? What chapter? It's a little bit complicated.
That's right, it is. Well, so the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita is always the best place to start. The first chapter is really just kind of setting the stage for a dialogue, and it's a dialogue that takes place between Arjuna and Sri Krishna. And in the second chapter is titled, in some commentaries, it is titled Sankhya Yoga. It is following the process of Sankhya, or enumeration, to understand the truth. What are the different categories of things? And one of the most important things to understand is what is Atma Tattva. And this is described in the second chapter. So, the step one, the A of the ABC in Bhagavad Gita, you have to start with chapter 2. And from there, what process of yoga do you follow? Well, understanding this, we go to chapter 4 in Jnana Yoga. Sri Krishna says that tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. You have to find someone who is realized, someone who is a bona fide teacher or guru, who is tattvadarshi, who has vision of the truth. That's the person that we should approach and try to learn from them. And it is not about making up a new idea to do something new, but it's really about understanding a path that is going to take us somewhere we've never been and we may never have imagined before, but we want to set out. My guru once told me, if you're going on a journey of 1,000 miles, should you know your destination first? Well, yes, you should. You might consult a map, or you might ask a realized soul, a guru, someone who has seen that higher plane of existence in union with the divine.
So let's say somebody wants to do yoga seriously. They are going to a yoga class. Maybe they have now turned vegetarian. They're following the yamas or some niyamas, whatever they can. And their yoga teacher is really nice. What do they do? First thing first, you said Atma Tattva. So first thing they do is they realize that they're not this body. Can you tell us some verses about Atma?
Well, yes, now we're talking about the actual, what is Atma Tattva in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And Sri Krishna starts out by saying that Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavata va nabhuyaha. There is, for the soul, the Atma, there is no birth or death. These concepts of birth and death relate to the body, and we are not the body. This is a very important, and for some people it's a very shocking revelation, the idea that who I am is actually Atma, and Atma is a spark of spiritual energy. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. You cannot cut the Atma into pieces. You cannot harm it with weapons. It cannot be moistened by water or dried by the wind. These are all properties of the Atma. The Atma is never born. The Atma is eternal. It has always been. There's not a time when it was created.
So Atma is basically the soul. And when a yogi is sitting down, and there are verses in Bhagavad Gita that talks about, a yogi is meditating within self, and the self that they're meditating on is Atma?
Yes, that is partly true, because in the Bhagavad Gita, it is described that the Atma resides along with Paramatma. So there is a difference between the individual Atma, who's minute in quantity, and the Paramatma, who is a representative of the greater whole. And meditation is actually on the Paramatma. And it is described that the Paramatma, this is from the Upanishads, Dvasuparna Sayujasa Kaya. They are like two birds sitting on the same branch of a tree. They are right together. So someone who...
Who are the two birds? The one is Atma.
One is Atma and the other is Paramatma. So Paramatma is the unlimited divine in a minute form residing within every atom of creation and within the hearts of all beings.
So Atma and Paramatma, which is the soul and the super soul, which is part of the divine, are residing in all entities' heart, even if it's an ant.
Yes, every entity, even a bacterium, within a bacterium there is the Atma. And Paramatma is...
What about a virus?
Well, viruses are an interesting question because they are technically not living things. It's just a snippet of RNA enclosed in a protein capsid shell, and they bind to a host. So they could be said to have some properties of living things or properties of non-living things. The jury is out on that, but generally it doesn't seem that a virus would have Atma, although it can have an effect on the body of a living being.
So people who do yoga or call themselves yogi or looking at the process of yoga in this time of quarantine, what can you do? What can you take away from Gita to make your life a little better?
Well, I would say first and foremost, this concept that you are not this body. You are the Atma. And actually your source of bliss can entirely be found within. We are not dependent on our creature comforts. The other thing that the Gita tells us is that the mind can be our greatest friend or it can be our greatest enemy. Look at when people are protesting and they're getting all upset because they can't go to Applebee's. That's the mind being the enemy because they are focused on the negative. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I can't live without going out and being in a restaurant or something like that.
Or they're all going out in hordes and beaches without any mask and so on. So it's very hard to stay at home. So do you think the process of meditation is going to help all of us?
Absolutely. There's a verse in the Upanishads that says, Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani iti rama padenasau param brahmabhidiyate. The divine is called by the two syllables Rama because yogis, and this gets back to your question about who is a yogi, yogis find unlimited bliss in the Supreme, who is called Rama. By many names, but Rama is one of them, and this is the paribhasha or definition of the name Rama. That person in whom yogis find unlimited pleasure and bliss. We are carrying around with us the potential to realize unlimited bliss without end. Think about anything that we think of in this world as pleasurable. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's always some frustration mixed in as well. There is no unadulterated pleasure or real bliss in worldly things. But if we follow the process of yoga even a little bit, Sri Krishna says, Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayo nivedite swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even if you make a little bit of progress on the path of yoga, that progress will not be lost. Even if you die and you take birth again, your progress in yoga will be maintained and you will be able to resume where you left off. Whereas this is not true.
So here's a question for you. What yoga are we talking about? The bhakti yoga? So if we die in whatever yoga process that we had done in this life, next life we'll continue that? Or is it the Ashtanga yoga? Which yoga are we talking about?
Well, it is generally true of anyone on the path of yoga, but it is especially true on the path of bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is also sometimes called the yoga of grace because it is seeking union and grace and the showering of blessings from the divine. And this is particularly a recommended path for the serious spiritual adherent, someone who wants to get out of the whole existence, worldly existence, and who wants to be united in loving relationship with the divine.
All right. So one more question. In Ayurveda, one of the aim and objective is life, or the four purusharthas, which is dharma, duty, artha, acquiring wealth by um, ethical means, kama, lust or desire, and moksha, which is liberation from the material body, eventually going in higher planets or heaven, as some people call it. And in yoga, it is samadhi. What is the difference between moksha and samadhi?
Well, that is a very good question. Moksha is also called apavarga. In Sanskrit, we have the syllables pa, pa, ba, ba, and ma. This is called pavarga. And it is symbolic of 5 types of conditions that exist in this world, which are to suffer working hard so that we foam at the mouth, to be disturbed, to have fear, to have death, and other types of suffering as well. And moksha means getting out of that cycle of repeated birth and death and suffering. And samadhi is something that can be attained in this life, and the conditions that define the material world are present, but the yogi who is in the stage of samadhi is not affected. Now, there is the stage of moksha is also described as jivan mukti. Jivan mukti means that even within this life, even within the life in this material world, one is factually liberated by dint of being absorbed in a higher truth, in a higher state. But moksha really technically is referring to the state of complete cessation, getting completely out of this world, because as Sri Krishna also describes in the Gita, there is another reality which is completely beyond this, in which everything is self-luminous and there is no darkness, there is no birth, death, disease, and old age. There is no hatred and ignorance and envy and all of the other negative properties that we find in this world. And attaining that state is really what is moksha.
Well, that was wonderful. We're going to come back and talk about different chapters from Bhagavad Gita. Keep on listening to our podcast. Namaste.